Welcome to Lavender Town Radio, where shadows whisper and every story hides a darker truth. Tonight, let me take you deeper into the world of Pokémon you were never meant to see.
My name is Clara. I'm a potter. I live in Ecruteak City, a place where the past never truly dies. It simply settles like a fine layer of dust on the ancient rooftops and stone-paved streets. From my small ceramic studio, I can see the city's two legendary towers, one shimmering and one burnt, standing as stark reminders of creation and destruction. But for me, the heart of Ecruteak was in the small house next door. It was the home of Mr. Silas and Mrs. Nora. They were as much a part of my life as the clay beneath my hands. They had no children of their own, and I, a transplant from another region, was welcomed by them as a granddaughter. Mr. Silas, with the hands of a retired carpenter, could tell a story just by describing the grain of a wooden table. Mrs. Nora, with her sparkling eyes, had a perfect memory for every single flower in their garden. Their home was always filled with the smell of baked goods, the sound of classic jazz, and above all, love. A love that had lasted 50 years, as sturdy as the ancient oaks that surrounded the city. But then, a shadow began to creep into that warm home. It didn't come from the ghosts in the burned tower. It came from within. It started with small things. Mrs. Nora began to forget the names of the flowers she'd planted. Then she forgot the way home from the market she'd walked 1,000 times. Dementia came on like a slow fog, gradually erasing the details of the world around her. The most painful part was when it began to erase Mr. Silas. One afternoon, I brought them some tea and found Mrs. Nora looking at Mr. Silas with a polite confusion. "Hello, sir. It's so kind of you to visit." My heart broke at the pain in Mr. Silas's eyes. He just smiled gently. "It's me, my love. It's your Silas." He fought. He put sticky notes all over the house. He showed her old photo albums every day, retelling their stories as if for the first time. But the fog only thickened. Soon, Mrs. Nora was lost in her own world, a world of fragmented memories and strange faces. Mr. Silas began to wither. The man who was once full of life was now a shade, haunted by the loss of the wife who was still sitting right in front of him. And that's when he started listening to the whispers of the forest. My neighbors shared 50 years of memories. Now, a Pokémon is stealing them one by one. "They say there's something in the Ilex forest," Mr. Silas told me one evening, his voice low and thick with desperate hope. "Not a normal Pokémon, something ancient. They say its song can restore what has been lost." I tried to dissuade him. I told him they were just folk tales, dangerous rumors, but I didn't understand the depth of his desperation. To him, a dangerous rumor was better than no hope at all. The next week, he was gone. He left me a note asking me to look after Nora. "I've gone to find a melody," it read. He was gone for 5 days. For 5 days, I cared for Mrs. Nora. She barely recognized me, just sitting by the window, staring out with empty eyes. And then, one morning, Mr. Silas returned. He looked exhausted, his clothes torn, but his eyes were burning with a triumphant light. "I found it, Clara. I found it." He wouldn't go into detail, but he said he'd found a Mismagius deep in the forest. He had pleaded with it, told it of his love, of his pain, and it had sung a song, A melody, he said, that was unlike anything he had ever heard, a tune that seemed to be woven from moonlight and forgotten memories. I was skeptical until that afternoon. I was in my pottery studio when I heard the familiar sound of jazz drifting from next door, and then a clear voice began to sing along with the tune. It was Nora's voice. I ran over, my heart pounding. The scene before me was unbelievable. Mrs. Nora was in the kitchen, baking, humming along to the music. She turned to me and smiled, a real, radiant smile. "Clara, dear, you're just in time. The first batch of ginger snaps is about to come out." She remembered my name. She remembered my favorite cookie. Mr. Silas was sitting in the living room, tears streaming down his face as he watched his wife. It worked. To me, a miracle. It gave me back my Nora. It was a miracle, a perfect miracle. Or so I thought.
He found a Pokémon that could heal his wife's lost memories. He never asked what it cost. The next few days were like a dream. Nora was back, not just in fleeting moments of clarity. She was fully herself. She remembered everything, from the Prime Minister's name to the story of how Silas spilled paint on her best shoes 40 years ago. The house was once again filled with laughter and the smell of baking. But as Nora's light grew brighter, I started to notice something strange. Silas's light seemed to be dimming. It began with small, dismissible things. "Clara, could you pass me the sugar?" he asked one morning while standing directly in front of the spice cabinet. Another time, as I was helping them clean, he stared at me for a long moment with a flicker of confusion. "I'm sorry, dear. For a second, I forgot your name." He laughed it off, waving his hand. "Must be old age." But Silas never forgot anything. The most disturbing incident happened over the weekend. I was at their house for dinner. Nora was happily recounting the story of their honeymoon in Cyanwood City. "And then Silas," she laughed, "he tried to impress me by arm wrestling a machoke on the beach." "It wasn't a machoke, my love. It was a machop. I'm not that crazy." Nora blinked. "No, I'm sure it was a machoke. I remember it clearly because you lost so spectacularly." "I'm certain it was a machop," Silas said again. But this time his smile was a little strained. A shadow of uncertainty crossed his eyes. Later that evening, after Nora had gone to bed, I saw Silas sitting alone in the living room, looking through their old photo albums. He was staring at a picture from Cyanwood. In it, a young Silas was being thoroughly beaten in an arm wrestle by a very large machoke. He no longer remembered.
The miracle worked. His wife remembered everything, but to give her a memory, he had to sacrifice one of his own. Silas's decline accelerated. Their roles had been cruelly reversed. Now it was Nora, sharp and lucid, who had to care for him. "Silas, your keys are right here on the hook," she would say gently. "Silas, we've already had dinner, my love." The true horror set in when the core memories began to disappear. One afternoon, Nora wanted to listen to their song, an old jazz tune they had danced to at their wedding. She put on the record. Silas just looked at her, blankly. "You don't recognize it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Nora," he said, confusion plain on his face. "It's a nice tune, but I've never heard it before." I watched Nora break that night. She came knocking at my door, sobbing. "Something is wrong with him. He isn't my Silas anymore." I knew the truth, a horrifying certainty that had been forming in my mind. This wasn't a miracle. It was an exchange.
a transference. The Mismagius' song didn't create memories from nothing, it took them from somewhere else. For Nora to remember their wedding dance, Silas had to forget it. For her to remember my name, he had to sacrifice a piece of his memory of me. He was being erased, piece by piece, to rebuild his wife. I tried to talk to him, but it was difficult. How do you ask a man about the memories he doesn't even know he's lost? Finally, I confronted him. "Mr. Silas," I said gently, "tell me about the Mismagius. What did it say to you? What did it do?" He looked at me, his eyes now holding a frightening distance. "Mismagius? I don't know what you're talking about, Clara. I've never left Ecruteak." It had taken the memory of itself. It had erased the evidence of its own crime. I went to the ghost-type gym leader for help. He told me it wasn't a miracle, it was a transaction. I couldn't stand by and watch Silas fade away. Ecruteak was a city of ghosts and legends. If anyone could understand this, it could only be one person. I went to the Ecruteak gym. It wasn't a gym of bright machines. It was a temple, dark and silent, lit only by eerie blue ghost flames. An invisible path led across a bottomless chasm, and on the other side, meditating among his Gengar and Haunter, was Morty. He was more than just a gym leader. They said he could see things that others couldn't. He felt the echoes of the past and the spirits that lingered. I told him the story, my voice shaking, about Silas and Nora, about the dementia and the miraculous recovery, about the stolen memories. Morty listened, his eyes closed without interruption. When I was finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Mismagius is not a demon, child. It is a creature of balance, an artist that weaves illusions from the threads of emotion. It does not create, it only reshapes. When that man came to it, bearing a grief and a love strong enough to shake the forest, it responded. It performed a psychic surgery. It took his memories," I said. "It transferred them," Morty corrected, "like a blood transfusion. It siphoned the living memories from the husband's mind to fill the voids in the wife's. But a body can only hold so much blood, and the mind can only hold so much memory. This transaction, it is not sustainable. Soon, the husband will have nothing left to give, and then the melody will demand a different price." A cold dread ran down my spine. "A different price?" Morty said flatly, "Life force. It will begin to take his life. We must intervene." To break the curse, they couldn't fight it. They had to sing one last song together. Morty and I went into the Ilex forest that night, guided by his Gengar, its grin the only light in the darkness. We found them in an ancient clearing where mossy stones were arranged in a circle. Silas and Nora were there, and hovering above them, like a crowned sorcerer, was the Mismagius. It wasn't frightening. It was strangely beautiful, its ghostly body emitting a soft violet light, and it was singing. The melody, it was both painful and sweet. I felt my own memories being stirred, joys and sorrows being pulled to the surface. Nora was standing, lucid and radiant, but Silas was kneeling on the ground, his face empty, soulless. A faint stream of energy was flowing from him to the Mismagius, and from the Mismagius to Nora. "We can't attack it," Morty said. "That would just break the balance violently and could kill them both. The curse was made from their love. It must be ended by their love." Morty stepped into the circle. "Nora," he called, his voice ringing with a strange power. "Look at your husband." Nora turned. For the first time,
she truly saw the emptiness in Silas's eyes. She saw the man she loved fading away before her. "Silas," she sobbed. "You must choose," Morty said. "Keep this clarity and lose him forever, or let go." It was a cruel choice, to keep yourself or to save the one you love. Nora looked at Silas, tears streaming down her cheeks. She went to him, knelt before him, and took his hands. "Silas," she whispered, "look at me." She began to sing, a very quiet song. It was their song, the old jazz tune. At first, Silas didn't react, but then a flicker of recognition sparked in his empty eyes. His lips moved. He began to hum along, weakly. They sang together, a duet of a shared memory, a declaration of a love stronger than magic. The Mismagius shrieked, not in anger, but in confusion. The energy of this pure love was disrupting its melody. With one final cry, it severed the streams of energy and vanished into the darkness. Silas collapsed into Nora's arms. They returned home. The miracle was gone. Nora was confused again. The fog had returned, but something had changed. Silas was back, weak, but himself. He remembered. It was a happy ending, not the fairy tale kind where everything is cured. Nora's illness remained, but the curse was broken. Now, when I look out my window, I no longer see a broken man caring for a stranger. I see a husband holding his wife's hand as they face the sunset together. Sometimes she won't remember his name, but he will start humming their song, and for a moment, she will smile, a smile of recognition that runs deeper than memory. They were no longer whole, but they were one again. And in a city full of ghosts, that's as close to a miracle anyone could hope for.
The signal fades, but the darkness lingers. This was Lavender Town Radio. Return, if you dare, because the next story may be your last.